For today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this Yoda coffee cup cozy. To make this, you will need a 6mm crochet hook, a 4mm crochet hook, a yarn needle, scissors, and a stitch marker. For my yarn, I have used the Lion Brand Pound of Love taupe color. Okay, and that is a number 4 yarn. They're all number 4 yarns that I used, just worsted weight. And then I used the Bernat Super Value in the forest green. And for the white and the black, there's really not a ton of white. I used white for the hair and a little bit in the eyes. So really you can use whatever white worsted weight yarn you have laying around. You just need a little bit. But for this purpose, I used the Red Heart Super Saver white. And the same with black. Black yarn I really just used for the mouth here and a little bit in the eyes. So I just had a ball of the Bernat Super Saver in the black. So I just used a couple little strands of that as well. So this coffee cozy, this pattern that I'm going to show you today, is made to fit a 9-inch coffee cup. So it's about like the size of this one here. And when I started the measurement, so you can adjust this to whatever coffee cozy you would like, just kind of measure where you think the bottom of the coffee cozy will sit down here, instead of measuring it in the bottom, because you want it at the kind of the skinniest point, and then the rest will stretch up over. If you make it too big, it's just going to fall off of the coffee cup. And this one is a little bit heavier because it's got all the extra little pieces of components there that kind of weighs it down. So you want to make it kind of tight. So if it's about 8.5 to a 9-inch coffee cup, as you can see when you go up to the middle, it's about a 9-inch. But I always do when I'm measuring it out, so you would want to do your chains to measure just around that bottom area of the cup. And the rest will stretch out to fit a little bit better. Okay, so to do any adjustments for this pattern, I started with a chain 33, but if you want to do any adjustments, you would just do chains in multiples of 2 and then add 1. So that would be how you would just adjust the pattern for the star stitch in the cozy. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start with the coffee cup sleeve in the taupe yarn. Okay, put my yarn over here. So I've got my taupe, and I'm going to use the 6mm crochet hook for this, and I will create a slip knot, and then I'm going to just chain 33. I'm going to be joining that chain to create a circle. So I'll show you a technique, and I'll put a link to this technique for joining a chain, the perfect way to join a chain, in the comments below. So you can check that out. It's a really cool way, just so that your chain doesn't get twisted around on you. Okay, so I have chained 3 here so far, and I need to do 33. So there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And about this point, I'm just going to stop for a second. I'm going to fold my chain like I would, so that all of my chains are at the top. And then I'm going to take, and I'm going to insert here my crochet hook at that first chain and line everything up. And these are just going to sit. I'm not going to really do anything with those. I'm just going to do that as like a placeholder. And then I'm going to slip back on, and I was at 12, and I'm going to continue chaining from there. So 12, 13, making sure that my V's of my chain still line up nicely. 14, 31, 32, 33. So here I just want to make sure that yes, I've got it all lined up. So the tops of my stitches all line up. My chain is not twisted whatsoever. And then I'm just going to take and pull that through to create my circle, just like that. Okay, so now we're going to knit in the round using the star stitch. So I'm going to show you here the star stitch. So for this beginning for star is a little bit different than the rest. You're going to start with a chain 3. So 1, 2, 3. Then you're going to go into the second chain from your hook. Okay. Pull through a loop and just leave it on your hook. Then you're going to go down to the next chain, okay, from our chain 3, and draw up a loop. So now you have 3 on your hook. Then you can see here where I began, right there, I'm going to go into the next chain, drop a loop, go to the next, drop a loop, and go to the next, drop a loop. So I went into my 2 chains there. So I chained 3. I started up my second chain from the hook, third chain from the hook, and then I went into the next chain of my ring, next chain of my ring, next chain of my ring. So now I'm here and I've got 6 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all of those loops. Okay? Chain 1. Now, in my video, I have references with photos and everything for the chain stitch. And I referenced this little middle guy where you just made your chain 1. So let me just take this out. I'm just gonna break down this star stitch for you here. So right here where you just made your chain 1, that circle, that's what I call the eye of the star. These guys here that come out, like the star formation, is what's called the legs of the star. So the first and second leg, so here's the first leg, the second leg of the star. So you're going to go into the eye, and then you're going to go in between the first and the second leg of the star. And then down here where that first leg goes into the chain, see how the first leg comes down and it goes into this chain right here? That's what I refer to as the base of the star. And then right beside it is the next chain in your ring, and it carries on. Okay, so to do our star stitch, now that we've got our first one completed, we're going to go into the eye of the star, so that little chain 1 space right there, and drop a loop. We're going to go in between the first and the second leg of the star. So right there in between that first and second leg, and I'm going to drop a loop. Then where that first leg went down into that chain stitch, that's the base of the star, go in there, drop a loop. Now I'm going to go into my next 2 chains. So here's my next, and then my next. Okay, and you will end up again with 6 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 6. Chain 1. Okay, let's do that again. So we're going to go into the eye of the star, drop a loop. Go in between the first and the second leg of the star. Okay. Drop a loop. Follow that first leg down to the base of the star. Go into the base and drop a loop. Then go into the next 2 chains. So there's 1, the first chain, and the next chain. You will have now 6 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through all 6, chain 1. So now you have 3 star stitches completed. Okay. One more time for the star stitch, and I'm going to slow this down maybe in slow-mo for you guys. Okay, so you're going to repeat that, creating star stitches all the way around. And when you have 16 stars, okay, I'm going to show you how to join it at the back so that there's not a big gap. So meet me back when you've got your 16 star stitches. Okay, so here we are. We have 16 star stitches. Okay, so now to make this join up in the round and not have kind of a big gap there, here's a little trick I use is I go into the eye, pull up a loop, go down to where the chain joined, so that beginning join down there, pull up a loop, you'll have 3 loops on your hook, go through all 3. And then you want to go to the 3rd chain that you created, so that top chain right there, okay? And you just want to join with a slip stitch at the top of that 3rd chain. And voila! So we have the first round of our star stitch. So now our second round, we're going to chain 2. And here I just like to use a stitch marker, so I know the beginning of my round when I get back. Okay. And this round is quite easy. We're just going to go, if you can see here, the eye of each star. So right here is the first eye. Is you're just going to go around creating 2 half double crochets in the each eye of each star stitch. So there's my first 2 half double crochets there in that first star stitch. So then I'm just going to move on into that second eye. You can see that there. And I'm going to do 2 half double crochets. Okay. In that second eye of the star stitch. So you want to keep going around. Here's my 3rd eye. You can see how your legs kind of jet out from it, and it creates that nice star stitch. So you want to go 2 half double crochets in each eye of each star around. You'll end up with 32 half double crochets if you want to count. Okay, and meet me back when you have your 32 half double crochets, and I'll show you how we join at the end to make it so that there's no gap at the back of that seam. Okay, we're back. We've got 32 half double crochets around into each eye of the star, and now we want to kind of pull this together here so that there's not a big gap at the seam for your coffee cozy. And I do this by doing a half double crochet 2 together stitch, and I'm going to do that. If you see here, just where my stitch marker is, you can see that the one down from that, that's my other chain 2 right there. And then the one below it, that's the kind of the base of that chain from the last row. So I'm going to go into these 2 spaces right here. My half double crochet 2 together just goes yarn over, go into that first, the base of the chain there that I showed you, draw up a loop, yarn over, go into that next chain, so the first chain there just below that stitch marker, and draw up a loop. Now you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on your crochet hook. You just want to yarn over and pull through all 5 of those loops, and that's a half double crochet 2 together. And then you just want to go where that stitch marker is, and you want to join right there with a slip stitch. Voila. Okay, so as you can see, we are joining that seam so that there's not really big gaps with the star stitch. So now we're going to go on to round 3. Okay, I'm just going to take my stitch marker out there. So for round 3, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And just like the first row, we're going to go down into the second chain from our hook and drop a loop. Third chain from the hook, go in, drop a loop. Now here at the base, right there, where everything kind of joined together. Okay, so you're going to go into that base, drop a loop. Then we're going to go into the next 2 stitches. So there's my first half double crochet stitch, drop a loop, and my next half double crochet, drop a loop. So we'll have 6 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 6, chain 1. And that's our first star stitch. Okay. And then just as before, we're going to go into the eye, into the first leg, into the base, and into the next 2 stitches, pulling up loops onto the hook, pull through all 6, and chain 1. Okay, so meet me back when you again have 16 star stitches. Okay, so here I am, I'm back. I've got 16 star stitches done for my 3rd round. And then I want to see how there's kind of this long gap in between the joining. So we're going to again go into the eye of the last star. Mine's a bit tight there. Okay, and if you follow your chain 3 down, so there was 1, 2, 3, right there at that base where that first chain was. That's where we're going to go in and drop another loop. Then we're just going to pull through those 3. Okay, see how that brought it just a little bit closer. Now we're going to go to that top there, that chain 3, and just join with a slip stitch. Okay. So again, we're going to repeat the 2nd round. So we're going to chain 2, place our stitch marker, and then we're going to do 2 half double crochets into the eye of each star around. So that first one, you can see it's a bit of a reach. So that's why at the end we're going to do that half double crochet 2 together just to tighten up that seam so that there's not a big gap. Okay, so just yarn over, 1 half double crochet, 2 half double crochets. And for this coffee cozy, the Yoda, I mean, if you want to make this sleeve just something a little more simpler and quicker and easier to make just by doing double crochets around or whatever. I mean, you're the designer, you're the maker, you do whatever you want to do. I did star stitches because Yoda is from Star Wars, ha ha ha, so I just did the star stitch for it. But if you feel like you want to do something else, by all means, go ahead. It's not going to make or break it. It's the face and everything that you sew on at the end that kind of looks more like Yoda, right? So continue doing your 2 half double crochets into the top of each star all the way around, and meet me back when you have again your 32 half double crochets. Okay, we're back. I've got 32 half double crochets around for my 4th round, and again I'm going to do a half double crochet 2 together. So here where my stitch marker is, I'm going to go down into that chain just below my stitch marker, and the one below that are going to be the 2 chains that I'm working into. Okay, so we're going to yarn over, go into that chain that's at the base, and pull through a loop. Now you have 3. Yarn over and go into that chain that's just below your stitch marker and drop a loop. Now you'll have 5 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 5. Then you're going to take and join with a slip stitch where you place that stitch marker. Voila! Round 4 is complete. So we're going to do 2 more rounds. So another round here of your star stitch. So chain 3, go into the 2nd chain from the hook, drop a loop, 3rd chain from the hook, drop a loop, go into that base right there where it joined. Okay, and then we're going to go into the next 2. So there's my first half double crochet, go into that guy, and the second one there. Now we'll have 6, pull through all 6, and chain 1. And again, we're going to go into the eye, in between the legs, into the base, and into the next 2. So there's 1, 2, pull through all 6, chain 1. So continue doing your star stitch just like that until you have 16 star stitches, and I'll meet you back at the end of the round. Okay, so here I am. I'm at my 16 star stitches in my 5th round. And here I'm just going to try to close that gap up a little. So I'm going to go into the eye, and then I'm going to follow my chain 2. So sorry, there's my chain 2. So just at the base there is where I'm going to go in. Then I'm going to pull through 3. And then I'm going to slip stitch there to the top of that 3rd chain. Okay. So for round 6, we're going to do the same thing as round 2. We're going to chain 2, place our marker, and do 2 half double crochets in each eye of each star all the way around until we have 32 half double crochets. And I'll meet you at the end when you've got your 32 half double crochets to do our half double crochet 2 together and show you how to do round 7. We're back. We are at the end of round 6. We're going to do our half double crochet 2 together to join up that gap near the seam. So yarn over, go into the base where we join together, yarn over, go into that stitch just below into that chain just below the stitch marker. And 5 now on our hook, yarn over and pull through those 5. Then we're going to, where our stitch marker is, we're going to join here with a slip stitch. And voila! So now our 7th row, we're going to add our edging onto the top. And if you look there at our seam, it looks really nice. So it's kind of like a mini star stitch there, just kind of closed up that gap. If we hadn't done that kind of special close, you would have saw bigger holes in that area. So that's why it's important when you're knitting in the round in the star stitch, just to kind of complete each round there in a special way. So for our 7th round, we are going to skip this first stitch right here. And we're going to go into this next stitch and we're going to do 5 single crochets. 2, 3, 4, 5 single crochets. Then I'm going to skip this stitch right here. I'm going to go bump right over top of that. I'm going to go into the next and slip stitch. Then I'm going to skip this one right here next to it, and I'm going to go into that next one. So skip one, go into the next, 5 single crochets again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going to skip this guy right here next to it. I'm going to go into that next stitch and slip stitch. Skip, go into the next, 5 single crochets. 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're just going to continue all the way around. So skip, go into the next, slip stitch, skip, into the next, 5 single crochets. Crochets, so skip and slip stitch, and then here where we began at the beginning, we're just going to join right there, the slip stitch, pull up our yarn, and cut. Okay, so now here we've completed our star stitch with our little border here on the top. Okay, and of course you'll weave in that end there. But here at the bottom, what I like to do, and it just helps when your coffee cozy is on your coffee cup, is this bottom where we did our starting chain here on that bottom row. So I'm going to flip my cozy upside down. I'm just going to work a single crochet border all the way around that bottom. So I'm going to just join here in that chain just before where my knot is. And I'm going to pull through, grab my working yarn. Okay, then we're going to go into that next one, kind of where my knot is. I'm going to work over top of my 2 tails, do a single crochet, and I'm just going to mark it there so I know when I get around that that's my first single crochet. And I'm going to go into all of my chains around. So some of them are a little bit finicky, especially the ones just close to that knot, but you'll find it's easier to work in once you get going here into the next chain. See how I'm just kind of working over top of those 2 tails? That's just to help me. I like to do that just to prevent me from having to weave those 2 tails in at the end, because I'm still going to have to weave in this top strand and this working yarn here that I'm working with. So I'm just going to continue here. I work over a few of them, going into the chains there, throwing those tails over top, give it a little tug, go into the next chain. Okay, throw those tails over top. So that's probably sufficient for weaving it in. And I'll snip those 2 tails, and then I don't have to worry about those guys. And then I'm just going to continue going into each chain all the way around, just doing a simple single crochet. Okay, so here I am. I've gone all the way around into each chain at the bottom of the cozy there, and I'm back to that beginning stitch marker. All I'm going to do here is go into that stitch and just join with a slip stitch. Pull my yarn through and cut. Okay, so here we have it. We just need to weave in your ends, and I'm going to meet you back for part 2 where we make the head of Yoda. So weave in your ends and grab your green yarn and meet me back. Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of the Yoda Coffee Cozy. So for this part here, I'm going to be showing you how to make the circular head for the part for Yoda. For this, you're going to need some green yarn. For this, I use Bernat Super Value. The forest green is what I've chosen. And then you're going to continue using your 6mm crochet hook. You might need the 4mm handy just for the technique I'm going to show you here. Some scissors, yarn needle, and a stitch marker. Okay, so for this I'm going to show you how to create the circular piece. I've got 2 here to show you. So this one here is just knit in a regular spiral, just using single crochets, knitting in the round, or crocheting in the round, just as usual. And as you can see, when you look at it, there's some spaces so you can see through it. Just in between the rounds, there's like spaces, which I didn't really like for the Yoda. I wanted it to be kind of a consistent so that there wasn't so much spacing in between. So I've done a special technique here with my stitches for knitting in the round, which I'm going to show you right now how I did that to get it so that you can see the 2 side by side. There's really just subtle differences, but for me, I just felt like it made a difference. So, I mean, if you want to go ahead and just knit spiral, it was a continuous round, so I didn't join with a slip stitch when I was knitting in the round. Go ahead and do it that way if you don't want to use the stitch technique that I used for this one here. But I'm going to be showing you how I did it this way. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to take our green yarn. We're going to begin with a magic ring. If you're not sure how to do a magic ring, I do have a slow-mo video that is very descriptive and shows you exactly how to do it, which is quite nice. So begin with your magic ring, okay? And in your magic ring, You're going to do 10 single crochets, but I want you to do them really loosely. Like think of your normal gauge and just really loosen up on that stitch. So 10 loose single crochets. So there's 2, 3, we're working into our magic ring, 4, 5, 6, just gonna pull up some working yarn here, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so as you can see, they look nice and loose. Normally I'm a fairly tight crocheter, so I really have to work on crocheting loosely. So just give it a double count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. So now I'm going to pull up on my magic ring, but I'm not going to pull it totally closed here. I'm just going to basically do it until the points meet, okay? Like that. I'm not going to pull it tight just yet. Okay, I'm just going to do it so that I can work over into this stitch. Okay. So here is my first single crochet right here. Okay, so I want to do an increase here, but I want to also do a stitch that's like a crochet knit stitch so that it looks consistent. So I'm going to be first crocheting into, like I normally would, just into the top stitch post like that. Then if you look at your crochet stitches here, you can see where the stitch post is, that it creates like a V right here. Right there is, I'm going to go into that V post. Okay, so first I'm going to crochet just normal into the top stitches, and then I'm going to crochet into those V posts. Okay, you guys see that good? So let's give that a try. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to do continuous rounds. So I'm going to do my first single crochet just in my stitch like normal, just a normal single crochet. Okay, for 1, I'm going to throw in that stitch marker so I know where my beginning one was because I'm continuously knitting in the, or crocheting in the round. I want to know where that beginning one is, and then I'm going to stretch my work out. I'm going to find that first V post, and I'm going to go right in between there. And that's why I want to crochet loosely, because I'm going to be working into those V posts, and they do get a little hard to get into sometimes if you've crocheted too tight. Okay, so I'm again just going to go in to the next one just like I would a normal single crochet. Okay, crocheting still loosely. Then I'm going to find that next V post there. I'm going to go right into that V post. Just wiggling my hook right through it. Pull up. Okay, stretch out your yarn here if you need to. And I'm going to go just like I would a normal single crochet into the next, and then into that V post. So I'm going to keep alternating between stitch and V post, stitch and V post. Stretching out your yarn so you're sure not to miss the stitches or your V posts. Okay, we're going to keep doing that all the way around. Stitch, stretch it out, find your next V post, go into that V post. Stitch, V post. So because I'm alternating stitch to V post, Sorry, I just gotta grab some working yarn there. Essentially, I'm putting 2 stitches into each of the last stitches from the previous round. So my increase will go from 10 to 20 single crochets for this round. Okay, so I'm still doing stitch, V-post, stitch, V-post. And then when you get close to that stitch marker, you'll go stitch, and then that V-post there right before your stitch marker. Okay, so now your stitch count should be 20. So let's just give that a count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Good. Okay. So my working yarn has decided to get itself all knotted up. Lovely. Here we go. Okay, so for round 3 here, we're not going to do any increases for this next round. We are going to just crochet into those V stitches. Okay, so our stitch count will stay with 20, but we're not going to be working into the stitches like we were before. We're going to be working just into those V posts. Okay, so take out your stitch marker, go into that first V post, and I'll show you here. Sometimes the first one is really tight to get into, so that's why I said it's good to have that little crochet hook handy. This is my 4mm crochet hook. I'm just gonna insert through that tough V post. So if you have any that are tough like that, you can use this technique. Just drop a loop, set that back down, and then you can complete your single crochet. So since that's my first one, I'm going to put my stitch marker. Okay, so 1 into the next V post, and that's all we're going to do is crochet all the way around. You might need to stretch it out there and see where your V post is, wiggle it in, work it around. Okay, so meet me back when you've got around round 3, you'll have 20 single crochets into those V posts. All right, so we've just gone around for our 3rd round. We've completed 20 single crochets into the V stitches. Now if you want, at this point where that gap is in the middle, for the magic ring, you still got that little tail at the back. You can just give that a tug and close that up. Okay, and at the end, you'll just kind of weave that in nice and tightly closed. Okay, so for round 4, we are gonna go take that stitch mark out. We're gonna go into the first stitch like we just normally would single crochet. Okay, make sure you're still single crocheting loosely. Place your stitch marker in the top of that first, and then we're going to go into the next 2 V posts. So there's 2 and 3. Okay, we're going to stretch it out here, and then right beside where we just did that V post, we're going to go in like it's a normal stitch. Okay, so there's 4, so stitch, V post, V post. It's going to be the repeat for this round. So it'll go stitch, V post, V post, stitch, V-post, V-post. So we just did stitch right there, and this looks like a tough one. So I'm just gonna, instead of struggling with it, grab that 4mm crochet hook, pull it up. Okay. This stitch is kind of the most frustrating one out of, I think, the whole pattern, is remembering to work loosely enough so that you can get that 6mm crochet hook in. Okay, so there is V-post, V-post. So now we're gonna go stitch, so just a normal regular crochet stitch, stitch, V-post, V-post, and after that second V-post right there, we're going right beside, so we just did our V-post right there, we're going to go right into that stitch, so that space right there. Okay, so stitch, V-post, V-post, and just repeat that all the way around. And for this row, you will end up, because we're increasing, you will end up with 30 single crochets. Okay, so continue, stitch, V-post, V-post, all the way around until you get to your stitch marker, and you will have 30 single crochets, and we'll meet back up for the last round. Okay, so here we are. We've just completed the 4th round, and we're going on to our last round, round 5. And for this round, we're just going to single crochet into each V-post around. So no increases for this round. You're just going to single crochet into each V-post. So I take out my stitch marker. I go into that first. Actually, I'm just going to use my smaller crochet hook here, because I know for some reason my first one is always tight. Place your stitch marker after your first. Okay, and just continue single crocheting around until you get to the end, and then I'll show you what I do for slip stitching to join. Okay, so here I am. I've just completed round 5, the last round for the head of the Yoda. Now I just want to take and join with a slip stitch into that first V. So I remove my stitch marker. I'm just going to go into that first V. Okay, I'm not going to go into the stitch. I'm going to go into the V just to make it a nice clean join. Okay, and just slip stitch. Pull my yarn through, and I'm going to leave a nice long tail for sewing that onto the coffee cozy. Okay, so now we've got our head made. We're going to go on to part 3, where we make the mouth and the nose. It's all kind of one piece that you'll sew on. So meet me back in part 3 for the mouth and nose. Okay, so here we are, part 3. We're going to make the mouth and nose of Yoda for this part. For this, you're going to continue using your green yarn, but this time you're going to be working with your 4mm crochet hook. Okay, and you also need scissors and yarn needle for this, and just a tiny bit at the end, just a tiny piece of your black yarn. Okay, so let's get started. So to begin, we're going to start with a slip knot. We're going to chain 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, then we're going to put 2 single crochets in the second chain from the hook. So right here is my first chain from the hook. Okay, and I'm going to go into that second chain. Okay, see that? So the first one is the one right tight up to the crochet hook. I'm going to go into that second chain from the hook. I'm going to put 2 single crochets. So there's 1. I like to just mark mine with a stitch marker just so I know. I don't think it's necessary for this part, but just in case. And go into that exact same chain for our second single crochet. Good. Now I'm going to single crochet in the next 5 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we've got it so that there's just 1 chain left in our beginning chain. And for this last chain, you're going to put 4 single crochets into that last chain. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you can see how our work just kind of started to naturally turn. That's good. We're going to keep turning our work, and we're going to be working down the other side of that chain. So essentially we're going to be crocheting in the round for this mouth and nose. So now it's kind of tight here. So next to where we just worked, we're going to go into that next chain. Okay. And we're going to single crochet in the next 5. I'm working over top of my tail just so that I don't have to weave it in at the end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm just going to pause here for a second and snip that tail. I do this just for convenience so that I don't have to go back at the end and weave it in. Now in this last single crochet right here next to the one we've just done, I'm going to do 2 single crochet. So 1, 2, and as you can see, it brings me back up to that beginning single crochet. And for that one, all I'm going to do is join with a slip stitch. Okay, so we've just completed our first round of the mouth. So for our second round, I'm just going to pop out my chain marker or my stitch marker. I'm going to chain 1, okay, and in that same single crochet that's just down from my chain 1, I am going to put a single crochet and put my stitch marker back in. Like I said, I don't really think it's necessary for this one, but I just like to, just in case I get distracted. Okay, so single crochet in the same stitch as the chain 1, we just did that, and we're going to single crochet in the next stitch. So single crochet right there. Okay, and then in the next stitch, I'm going to do a half double crochet. So half double crochet, and in the next stitch, a half double crochet. And then in my next stitch, I'm going to do 2 double crochets. in that exact same stitch. So there's 1 and there's 2 double crochets. So 2 double crochets in that 1 stitch. Then in the next stitch, I'm going to do half double crochet, and in the next half double crochet. And then I'm going to just single crochet all the way around until I get back to my stitch marker. Okay, so here I've made it back around. I'm just going to, in that first single crochet, join with a slip stitch. Okay, so this is my mouth part. I'm going to pull my yarn through, and I'm going to leave a long enough tail for sewing it on to my head. Now we're going to move on to putting the nose onto the mouth here. Okay, so we'll leave that tail like so. So as you can see, this is kind of the bottom of the mouth, and this is the part that kind of dips up, and we're going to attach that nose so that it kind of comes out of those 2 double crochets right there in the middle. Okay, so to do that, we'll take our yarn and fold it over just to create a little loop there. We're going to locate our 2 double crochets right there in the middle where we went into that exact same stitch. Okay, and the stitch just before that. Okay, so here's where we're going to be working. We want to go just before that, we're going to insert. So 2 right before that stitch with the 2 double crochets. I'm just going to pull the yarn through here at this point. And then I'm going to work into that next single crochet right there. And I'm just going to put a slip stitch in just to join. Pull that yarn tail tight. There we go. Now, here I want to go right in between these 2 double crochets. And I'm going to slip stitch. Chain 2, 1, 2. Yarn over, go back into that right in between those 2 double crochets. Pull my yarn through, and I'm going to pull it through 2. So now I have 2 loops left on my hook. Okay, I'm not going to complete that double crochet just yet. I'm going to yarn over, go back in between, pull it up, and just pull through 2. Okay, so now I've got what kind of looks like the beginnings of 3 different double crochets, but I've got 3 loops left on my hook. Okay, I'm going to yarn over, go back in to between those 2 double crochets, pull up a loop, and pull through 2. There we go. So now I've got what looks like the beginning of 4 double crochets with 4 loops on my hook. Okay, so I'm going to yarn over, go back in between, pull up a loop, pull through 2. Okay, so now you can see here I've got what looks like the beginning post of 5 double crochets with 5 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 5 loops on the hook. Okay, then I'm just going to chain 1, work my way back into that stitch between the double crochets, and I'm going to slip stitch. Then I'm going to go into the stitch right next door to where I was just working. A little bit tight, so pull your yarn out, work it around so you can get in there good. Now we're going to do another slip stitch. Okay, so this here we just created the nose, so I'm going to pull my yarn through, pull a little bit out, snip my yarn. Okay, and I'm going to weave in this tail right here. So I'm going to weave that into the back. Okay, so meet me back up when you've weaved in this tail right here, and I'll show you what we're going to do for just adding a little bit of the mouth. So here I'm back. I've just actually had to weave in 2 yarn ends where I began, connected my yarn, and then when I ended off, I weaved in both of those ends. And as you can see, there's a kind of a right side. So look, this looks right where my stitches look nice, and a wrong side. So this will be my back, okay? And this will be the front that you can see. Now I'm going to take just a little piece of my black yarn. You don't need a ton, really. Do it like that. Okay. I'm going to weave one end onto my yarn needle. Okay. And as you can see here, there's kind of a, where we kind of went around that first circle. Okay. So I'm just going to go in at the end. I'm going from the back side, working my way up. Okay. Leaving so that there's a little bit of a tail at the back that I can use to tie at the end. I'm going to jet on over to where that other side of that round, you can see here where my stitches kind of go around. I'm going to go down in through there. Okay. Then I'm going to flip over my work and just consistently right across the middle here, I'm just going to take and weave in that black yarn through these little knobs until I get over to that other side. Okay. So here, all I'm going to do is cut my yarn to make it a little easier to work with. So we're just going to tie these 2 ends together. Really easy for the mouth. I'm going to do a double knot there so it stays nice and secure. Being sure that I don't pull it too tight so that the front, so keep giving a look there at the front. Make sure you haven't pulled it too tight or anything. Okay. And then when you've got it how you want it, just snip off those ends. And voila! This is how we make the mouth. So eventually here, we're just going to sew that mouth onto our head. Okay, you can go ahead and do that now if you want, or you can do all the pieces at the end. Okay, so meet me back for part 4, where we're going to make the eyes. Okay, so here we are, we're back in part 4, where we're going to make 2 eyes for our little Yoda. So for this, you're going to continue using your green, your 4mm crochet hook. You'll need your scissors and your yarn needle for sure. You'll need just a little pieces of your black yarn and little pieces of your white yarn, whatever white or black worsted weight yarn you have. Or if it's not worsted weight, I'm sure you can make it work as well. Okay, so to begin the eye, we're going to start with a magic ring. And I will put a link to my slow-mo magic ring video in the comments below. Okay, so we're going to do 9 single crochets into our magic ring. So 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, and 9. Just give it a double count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Good. Pull that magic ring closed. Nice and tight. Good. Okay, we're going to slip stitch into the next 4 stitches. So slip, just kind of do it, don't pull too tight because you're working around something. So you want to make sure that you give enough room in your yarn so that your stitches can curve. So that was 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Now in our next stitch, we're going to do 2 half double crochets. So into this next one. So there's 1 half double and going back into that exact same stitch for our second half double. Okay. And then in our next stitch, we're going to do 2 double crochets. So there's 1 double crochet going back into that exact same stitch for a second double crochet. And then in our next one, we're going to do 2 half doubles again. So here's 1 half double crochet and going back into that exact same one for a second half double crochet. All right. And then we're going to slip stitch into the next 3 nice and loosely here. 1, 2, 3, and now we're back to the beginning. Right there, we've just created our first eye. So we're going to pull our yarn through, leaving enough yarn so that we can sew that eye onto the head eventually. Okay. There we go. So we just created 1 eye. You're going to have to make 2. So as you can see, I still got my tail at the back. That's okay for now. We're going to go on to putting the yarn in to create kind of the little definitions of the eye. And if there's another way that you like to do this or that you think would look better, then absolutely, you're the designer, you're the maker of this project for yourself. So you do whatever you think looks the best. I need to grab myself a little bit of black here. Okay. And I'm going to grab myself just a little bit of white. Okay, so you don't need a ton of black and white. And then you're going to take and thread it onto your yarn needle. So for this one here, I like to go, just see here the middle. That's kind of what I use as the directions for it. So first I'm going to kind of go flat this way, and then I'm going to take my black and just kind of go up that way. And keeping in mind that I'm working on the eye that I'm going to sew on the right side. So if I was doing the left eye, then it would be a little bit differently how I would set it up as well. So just keep that in mind. So I'm just going to come down in these stitches here, working from the behind the yarn into the front. Okay. Let's pull it up, leaving a little tail there at the back. Then I'm going to kind of go directly across from that. Good. And I mean, that looks cute just like that if you wanted to leave just a little black yarn like that. I've made some in the past that just had that. It looked very cute. Okay, here I'm going to go back up to that starting point. So I worked my way back up. Then I'm going to go maybe somewhere just slightly off from that circle and back down. Okay. So that looks good. I'm okay with that. So then I'm going to flip my work. I'm just going to tie those 2 strands of Actually, might be better just to tie everything at the end, so then you're not working over bumps and everything. So let's do our white next. So for white, I'm going to basically follow along with what I just did. Except I'm going to go so more in the middle, come up through more of the middle there, in between where those two pieces of the black are. So I'm going to come up. And then I'm going to go kind of right on top of that first black yarn. I'm going to go down into the spot there, like so. Then I'm going to come up just in the middle there where my black had met those 2 points in the middle. I'm going to go up. Then I'm just going to follow this black yarn up on top with my white. There. So then at the back, and it is a little bulky at the back when you tie all these, but it's okay because when we sew the eye on, we want to do it so that it kind of pops out a little anyway, so it looks a little bit 3D. So whatever's in the back there really won't affect it too much because we're going to be sewing it on kind of popped out like that. Part is we're going to do the ears for this little guy. Okay, so meet me back in just a few. Guys, welcome to part 5 where I'm going to show you how to make the ears for Yoda. So for this part we're going to continue working with our green and our 4mm crochet hook. You'll also need some scissors and a yarn needle. So to begin, we're going to start with a slip knot. We're going to chain 11. So 1, 2, 10, and 11. Okay. And then in the second chain from the hook, we're going to slip stitch. Slip. And then we're going to slip stitch into the next 2 chains. So another slip stitch. 1 and 2. So that's a total of 3 slip stitches. Okay. And then in the next 3 chains, we're going to single crochet. So 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, 3 single crochet. All right, so we're going to half double crochet in the next 2 chains. So half double crochet, half double crochet. In the next chain, you're going to do a double crochet. And now we've got it so that there's just 1 chain left. So for this one, we're going to do a double crochet, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then in that last chain that we're working in, we're going to slip stitch. Turn our work, and now we're going to work down the opposite side of our chain. Okay, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then in this next chain right here, we're going to do a double crochet, and then in our next chain we're going to do a double crochet. I'm just working over top of that tail, as you can see, so that I don't have to weave that in at the end. Our next chain, we're going to do a half double crochet. So we're just mirroring what we did on the other side. Next chain is a half double crochet. And then in the next 3 chains, we're going to do single crochets. So single crochet in the next 3. So there's 1 single, 2, 3. Then we're going to slip stitch into the next 3 chains. 1, 2, and then this guy up here at the top, slip stitch. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the makings of an ear right here. So here's the kind of trick to this one. So we're going to pull our yarn through, pull through nice long tail. Okay. We're going to give it a snip, and you're going to remember you're going to have to make 2, 1 for each side. So then depending on which side I'm going to be sewing this ear onto, so if I was going to sew it onto this side, or if I flip it over, I'm going to sew it onto this side. So you always want to make sure that you have the right side of your yarn showing. You don't want those back stitches to be what people see. So let's say I'm going to sew it on this side of his head. I'm going to take that long piece of yarn. I'm going to thread it onto my yarn needle, like so. And then see here, I'm just going to weave down twirling my way down those one side of that last stitch row there that we've got. So I'm just going to weave it. We good there? Keep weaving it. I'm just twirling that around my yarn needle. Once I get down basically to this side here, I'm going to pull that through, like so. Okay, so here, to give my ears just a little kind of curve at the top there, is I'm just going to pull this just ever so slightly, just a small tug, until I've got it to where I want it. And then once I've got that curve that I desire, it's going to give it a knot there so it doesn't move on me when I'm sewing it onto the head. So don't pull too tight just there just yet. Go into your next one and just a second knot. Okay, so then you're ready just to take this guy and sew him onto the head. So you're going to do that, repeat those steps to make the second ear, except the next time you would flip it and you would go down that side, pull it, and just knot it down there. Okay? So that's how we make the ears. Okay, so for the hair, you're going to need your white yarn and kind of a hard bristled brush of some kind. So you can use like a metal brush I've used in the past even. That's just to help comb it out. So I'll show you the technique here. So around the ears, I like to add maybe a couple strands here, so at the top of the ear, and then I'll put one somewhere maybe around the middle-ish, and then some kind of poking out the bottom of the ear. So I'll show you how I do one, and then you just add them in wherever you think it looks best for you. So just at the top of the ear, I'm going to use my crochet hook. Okay, I'm just going to go in behind the ear. I'm going to fold my little piece of white yarn in half and just draw it through. Okay, so there's a little loop there. And I would add all of your little pieces of yarn on first before you comb it out, but I'm just going to show you this technique because that's all you do for each strand of yarn that you want to do. And that might be obviously way too long, so let's cut that. It'll be easier to work with. And then I'll show you the technique I use for getting it to look really fuzzy like that. So you want to take these pieces here, and like I said, you would add all your pieces of white yarn on first, and then you would do this next step. So I twist my yarn here, if you can see it. And you can see all these little individual strands that make up the one strand of yarn. I want to separate all of those into like individual little tiny separate strands. See how it kind of looks crinkly there? Crinkly, or what's that word? Crimped? So you separate them all like that. And you want to do that for all the little pieces of yarn that you have on your Yoda head. Okay, so you would separate them all first, like so. And I mean, we can just do this with some music on, nice and relaxing. It does take a little bit of time to separate all the strands. Really important though that before you comb it out, you separate them. So this guy looks kind of funky now. So then I would take and lay him on a flat surface like this, and then I would take my hard bristled brush. You just want to get anything out of the way of the brush because I don't want to comb that ear, so I'm just going to fold that over for now. And you just take and comb it out like that. And then look, you got this really fuzzy, cool hair. And then at the end, once I've got all my hair combed out, then I go along and I give Yoda a little haircut with my scissors, and I try to shape it so I would cut it however I want my little guy to look. Okay, so you can add just a few if you think it's going to get in the way of the coffee cozy. Even just the one there looks kind of cool.